What's squawking, raucous parrots? Welcome back to Monkey Boys Toys, and welcome back to the item of seating furniture that is the sofa. Thanks very much for joining me again. Here's a monkey's face to look at. Now, you may remember a few months ago I showed this, which was my collection of Mr. Men books. Now, in the interests of gender equality, this week I'm going to be showing you this, which is my collection of Little Miss books. Now, I appreciate this may not be of interest to most of you, and I'm not really expecting this video to do particularly well. But nevertheless, this is an item in my collection, so I thought I'd like to show it. What I'm going to do is open the box and we'll have a look at how they're presented. I have all 37 of the books. They're still being produced to this day, as a matter of fact, but I've got 37 of the books in the Little Miss set, and I've also got 4 additional Mr. Men books that have been produced recently. But I'll just pop those down to my side, and then we can look through them one at a time and just have a look at the characters. So these books were written and illustrated by Roger Hargreaves, and the Little Miss collection started in 1981. And when Roger Hargreaves died in 1988, his son Adam Hargreaves took over writing and illustrating the books. But we'll start with the books that were released in 1981. Let's just remove Monkey's face from the shot there. Okay, so the first Little Miss book was Little Miss Bossy. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Mr. Men books, they're very simple books. They're sort of, I guess they're aimed at children between the age of about 3 and 5, something like that. So they're very simple books with colourful illustrations. And many of us in the UK will be familiar with these books. Here you go. Here's a sort of line up on the back. It's like a 37 back book here, showing all the characters that are in the series. But we'll go through them one by one just so that you can have a bit of a look at them. So the first one there is Little Miss Bossy. I'll pop her there. Again from 1981, we've got the second book, which was Little Miss Naughty. I do remember this one from being a child. I didn't read all of the Little Miss books because obviously as a young boy I was more interested in the Mr. Men, I guess. But that's quite an interesting look there at Mr. Small, all bandaged up. Anyway, there's Little Miss Naughty. Let's try and rattle through these quite quickly, otherwise the video is going to be too long. The next one up, we've got Little Miss Neat. There she is, nice and tidy. There we go. And the fourth book in the collection is Little Miss Sunshine. This is one that a lot of people do remember. This was quite a popular character in the series, Little Miss Sunshine. I never liked the king in this story. I think there was something about the fact that his moustache was so rounded. It didn't really look very good. I just always found the king a little bit disturbing in this book. See, that's a proper moustache there. So anyway, there we go. Whoops. Little Miss Sunshine. Okay, next up we have Little Miss Tiny. There she is, bless her, the little thing. Is that Mr. Uppity? No, Mr. Silly. That's Mr. Silly. He's sort of standing upside down on his head. We've got Mr. Greedy. A lot of the other Mr. Men did appear in the Little Miss books. Here we've got Mr. Funny. So as you can see, although there's Mr. Strong. So although it's a story about Little Miss Tiny, there are other characters from the Mr. Men stories that do appear in them. That was always a particularly sinister looking picture. Little Miss Tiny there being grinned at by Ginger, the farm cat. Anyway, let's carry on. Next up we've got Little Miss Trouble. So as you can imagine, she was always getting into trouble. But again, as you can see, we've got a lot of the other Mr. Men appearing in these books. That didn't often happen with the Mr. Men books. There were some crossovers, I think, but for the most part, the Mr. Men books were kind of just about the character on his own. But as I've said, the Little Miss books did incorporate the Mr. Men into their stories. Next up, we've got Little Miss Giggles. Now, this was actually released in 1984, so the books we've just seen were 1981. Little Miss Giggles makes the start of the 1984 books, as we can see here, 1984. And there were several released in 1984, so we'll go through some of those now. Once again, we've got other characters in here. So there we are, there's Little Miss Giggles. Next up, we've got Little Miss Helpful. Always handy to have around. Always always giving people some assistance. So there we go. It looks like Mr. Happy has got measles, it would seem. Yes, he's got measles. Poor Mr. Happy. Anyway, there we go. Next up, we've got Little Miss Magic. So there she is. Mr. Tickle there. Mr. something or other. Who's that? Mr. I don't know who. Is that Mr. Happy? No, that's not Mr. Happy. I don't know who that is. Oh, it's Mr. Tickle. He's just not got his long arms out. There's a shot of Mr. Tickle with normal sized arms. Okay, next up we've got Little Miss Shy. There she is. Timid little thing. Then we've got Little Miss Splendid. I always found these shoes rather alarming. They look quite dangerous, don't they? And you've got to wonder what sort of shape her feet were. But yeah, they're quite disturbing actually. But there's Little Miss Splendid. Next up, Little Miss Twins. So we've got a 2-for-1 here, and we've got the twins here. That's quite a chain there, isn't it? He's got some real bling there. So that's crazy. I guess he's the mayor. Is it the mayor? Yes, it is. Mr. Double Chin, because of all his chins. So there we are, Little Miss Twins. Next up, one of my favourites, Little Miss Chatterbox. I remember this one from when I was a kid. This was a pretty good story. But again, we've got Mr. Uppity, Miss Splendid, Mr. Greedy there. So yeah, again, lots of these stories didn't really focus so much on the Little Miss characters, which is a bit of a shame, really. I quite liked it when the stories were focused solely around one character. Next up, we've got Little Miss Dotty. Now, Miss Dotty, when this book was published in the United States, she was renamed to Little Miss Ditzy. And I believe that was the only character that had a name change when the book was published overseas. So Little Miss Dotty became Little Miss Ditzy. So there we go. Let's just shuffle these along a little bit, otherwise I'm going to run out of room. Okay, next up we've got Little Miss Late. So she was quite cool, always showing up late for everything. Again, got some different characters here in the stories. Another one of those peculiar moustaches. So there we go, Little Miss Late. Next up we've got Little Miss Lucky, looking a bit like a jar of jam with that strange hat on. But there we go, Little Miss Lucky, pop her there. Next up, Little Miss Scatterbrain, which is quite a nice name for a character. She's pretty cool. She was all over the shop. But yeah, there we go. So there we go, Miss Scatterbrain. Doesn't appear to have any eyes, so that probably doesn't help her in being particularly organised. Next up we've got Little Miss Star. Now I don't remember this character at all. I would have thought they could have made her a star shape. But anyway, there's Little Miss Star. Let's just have a look what year this was. But yeah, we're still on 1984. I'm not sure what happened in 1982 or 83. I don't know why there was a sort of 2-year hiatus. Next up we've got Little Miss Busy. I mean, I would say that this is sort of maybe Little Miss, I don't know, Little Miss Intellectual, perhaps. She looks rather intellectual. She's always got a nose in a book. But there we go. Oh, is that a lot of eggs? 72 eggs, apparently. There we go, there's a lot of eggs. Obviously the eggs from the UK are the brown ones, and the eggs from the States are the white ones, because as we all know, our American cousins do enjoy a good white egg, which is not something that we get in the UK very often. It does happen, but most of our eggs are brown. Anyway, next up we've got Little Miss Quick. So she was always rushing about. So there we go, causing all kinds of hijinks with her speeding around the place. Next up we've got Little Miss Wise. So there we go, clever clogs. Next up is Little Miss Tidy, always keeping things nice and neat. There we are. Let's sort of race through these now because the video's getting a bit long. Next up is Little Miss Greedy. Now I don't know if she's featured with Mr. Greedy. There we go. So there's Little Miss Greedy and Mr. Greedy. Although I would argue she could probably eat more because she's got a bigger mouth than Mr. Greedy has. But anyway, there we go. Little Miss Greedy. Okay, now we've got Little Miss Fickle, which is, I guess, quite an interesting word to teach to young people. Most young people wouldn't have known what fickle meant, so I suppose that was a good introduction of that word into a young person's vocabulary, perhaps. Now we've got Little Miss Brainy with her pointy nose. Looks a bit like Mr. Rush, I think. But there we go. An elephant with a knot in its trunk. So there we go, Little Miss Brainy. Now we've got Little Miss Stubborn, in a bit of a hump there, with her arms folded. And more eggs. They do like eggs in these stories. Oh, and there's a worm with a scarf on. So there we go. Little Miss Stubborn. Next up we've got Little Miss Curious. There she is, wondering what's going on. Always investigating stuff. Then Little Miss Fun. So she was enjoyable to be around, hanging around with Little Miss Fun. Little Miss Contrary. Don't remember this one. But again, another word that probably some young people weren't particularly familiar with. So that's more of an unusual name. Little Miss Contrary. Let's have a look, see what year this is. So have we changed the year yet? 1990. Yes, we have. I think Little Miss Busy was the. Where's Miss Busy? She's back here somewhere. Little Miss Busy was the first book in 1990. I can't remember seeing Little Miss Lucky. There's Little Miss Busy. Little Miss Quick, Wise, Tidy. Little Miss Lucky was produced in 1985, but we haven't come across her yet, so I'm not quite sure why her book is out of order in the sequence. Anyway, let's move swiftly on. We've got Little Miss Somersault, nice fun character there, and one of the few Mr. or Little Miss characters that have long legs. Most Mr. Men and Little Miss characters have short legs, but she had long ones, as we can see here. Next up, Little Miss Scary. That's a pretty cool little character. She was cool, like Little Miss Scary. It was quite a horrifying story with lots of spooky happenings. There's Mr. Jelly shitting his pants. So yes, there we go. Cool. Wah! Boo! Little Miss Scary. We've got Little Miss Bad, and she looks rather a lot of trouble, doesn't she? Although she seems quite happy actually, but she's a mischievous little sort. There, look at that expression on her face. Would you trust her? Not at all. Anyway, there we go. Little Miss Bad. Next up we've got Little Miss Whoops, who is very similar to Mr. Bump. As you can see, she's blue and has bandages around her head and her midsection, just like Mr. Bump has. We're in 2003 now. I think Little Miss Scary was the first book in 2003. So, yep, now we're on to 2003. I still don't know where Little Miss Lucky is. I'm going to have to go through these and see if I can find her. Perhaps I've already gone past her. Little Miss Princess next up. So there we are. There's her. Then we've got Little Miss Birthday, which is cool. There weren't that many characters that had accessories on the front. A few of them did, but Miss Birthday's got a balloon there and a gift parcel there. Little Miss Christmas. This is number 36. Let's have a look what year this one was. This is 2005. Little Miss Christmas. There we are. I guess it's sort of in the shape of a Christmas tree somewhat. There she is with Santa, who looks rather miserable. And then book number 37, the final one in the series that I have, at least anyway, is Little Miss Hug. Quite a sweet little character there. Let's see if we can. There we go. There she's hugging Mr. Grumpy, who's not too happy about it. But yeah, there we go. And she's hugging Mr. Greedy. He looks like he's enjoying that big hug. She's a bit like Mr. Tickle, isn't she? Because she's got long arms. Anyway, so that's the series of 37 Little Miss books that I have. Now, when I bought them, I did get some freebies thrown in. And that is Mr. Bump Loses His Memory. There we can see, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Bump with the bandages on his head and around his middle. I do like Mr. Bump. We've got Mr. Men in London. So I guess that's showing the Mr. Men's day trip to London, a bit of an outing for them. There's Mr. Tall trying to squeeze himself into one of the tube trains on the London Underground. Next up we've got Mr. Jelly and the Pirates. A nice colourful book there. There are some special books here that we can see on the back. These are some of the special stories that were made. There's Mr. Jelly. And then last up we've got the terrifying Mr. Tickle and the Scary Halloween. An absolutely terrifying story. Not the sort of thing you want to read before you go to bed, unless you want horrendous nightmares. So, I mean, look at that, for example. What a terrifying image. So, Mr. Brave there, not so brave. So there we go. Anyway, that's my little look at some more Mr. Men, or should I say Little Miss books. They're still being produced today. I think the most recent one was published in maybe 2021, 22, something like that. So I dare say they will still continue to be produced in some fashion. But I'm happy with the set that I've got. I won't be looking really to add further to the collection. I'm quite happy with the 37 books that are in the set. But yeah, that's about it for this week, guys. Thanks for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please do give it a thumbs up and share it with any other raucous parrots you may know. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and do leave me a comment and let me know if you remember any of these books from your childhood. But for now, I'm going to make like a shepherd and get the flock out of here. See you later. Bye. Now, you may remember a few months ago I showed this, which was my collection of Mr. Men books. Now, motherfucker!